Okay, so today we're going deep on some ancient wisdom um, from this collection of letters by Seneca. He was this Roman statesman and philosopher, back in the first century AD.
Yeah.
And it's called Letters from a Stoic. And, we're hoping to help you guys kind of get a quick guide to ancient insights, right, for
Yeah.
modern life.
These letters were written to Seneca's friend Lucilius,
Right.
and they're more like essays than just personal notes.
Uh-huh.
They offer kind of a glimpse into Stoic philosophy, which, like, at its heart emphasizes virtue, and focusing
Yeah.
on what you can control. And so what we want to do is pick out the most relevant advice from Seneca for you today.
That's awesome. And this guy Seneca, right, he
Uh-oh.
led a very dramatic life. Like he tutored the Emperor Nero,
Right.
and eventually he was forced to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And his writings were like rediscovered after centuries. And they offer this incredibly practical guidance, right? Like even today.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with a topic that's really relevant for today's world, which is focus in learning, right?
Yeah.
And Seneca actually warns against superficial reading, in letter 2.
Mm.
And basically his core point is this: deeply engage with just a few really valuable sources rather than just like skimming a ton of different things.
Right.
And he even uses this analogy of food.
Yeah.
You need to digest it properly if you want to actually benefit. You can't just like,
Yeah, you can't just eat it and immediately throw it up.
right, exactly.
You have to let your body process it.
And he has this great quote where he says, to be everywhere is to be nowhere.
Right.
Which, like, I feel like that's so true today with, like, information overload.
Yeah.
Like, we have so much information coming
Yeah.
at us. But how much are we really digesting?
Right. Exactly.
So I guess the key takeaway here is, like, really prioritize deep engagement for lasting knowledge.
That's right. And this really connects to your desire to learn thoroughly without feeling overwhelmed, right? Because we all want to learn things, but we don't want to feel like
Right.
we're drowning in it all.
Yep.
So Seneca is advising like forming close relationships with a few key thinkers
Mm.
instead of just like briefly encountering a lot of them.
Right.
So really going deep
Mm-hmm.
with a few key authors or books or whatever it is you're studying. Now kind of shifting gears a little bit to letter 3, he talks about the nature of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And Seneca, he's challenging how we casually use that word friend.
Right.
Like we call everybody our friend.
Right.
But true friendship, according to Seneca, requires trust. And that trust has to be built on careful judgment
Yeah.
before you even form the bond. And he says to share your worries with a trusted friend.
Wow.
So what's the actionable insight here? It's to choose your friends wisely and cultivate that deep trust, right? Don't just become friends with everybody. Really think about who you're letting into your circle.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Like, how much do we really trust the people that we call our friends?
Exactly.
And one thing I found really interesting is, Seneca also believed that treating someone as loyal could actually foster that quality in them. Right. Like, if you treat somebody like they're loyal to you, they're more likely to actually be loyal to you.
Interesting.
So, moving on to letter V, Seneca talks about, living in accordance with nature without being, like, ostentatious.
Right.
So don't just use, like, shabby clothes to show off how much of a philosopher you are, he says. And, the really important thing is that inner transformation.
Yeah.
And that inner transformation should align with nature, but it shouldn't alienate society.
Mm.
And he even quotes Hecato. He says, cease to hope, and you will cease to fear.
Oh.
And like, think about that connection, right? It's like managing your expectations
Yeah.
can actually lessen your anxieties.
Right.
Because if you're not constantly hoping for things, you're not going to be as afraid when they don't happen.
That's right. That's a really good point.
So the takeaway, I guess, is authenticity over outward appearances.
I like that. Authenticity over outward appearances. What's interesting here, though, is the internal shift that Seneca advocates for.
Right.
So it's not just about what you're wearing or how you're presenting yourself to the world. It's really about that internal change.
Yeah.
Then in letter 6, he emphasizes self-reflection and progress. And Seneca believed that recognizing your own failings is actually a sign that you're advancing.
Uh-huh.
So, like, we tend to think of our failings as, like, setbacks.
Right.
But he's saying it's actually a sign that we're growing.
Right.
And he valued sharing wisdom through personal interaction. Hecato had this idea of becoming my own friend,
Wow.
which is a very interesting concept to think about. And it highlights the importance of self-acceptance. So the core insight here is that self-awareness is key to growth.
I love that quote, becoming my own friend.
Yeah.
So moving on to letter 7, this one's really interesting because it's a strong warning about the dangers of crowds, and especially, violent entertainment. Like back in his day, they had the gladiatorial contests.
Right.
And Seneca saw how easy it was for people's character to be corrupted by their surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like the brutal, lunch hour shows
Yeah.
where they would just have these like gladiators fighting to the death. It was just a prime example of how easily vices can creep into your life
Yeah.
if you're surrounded by that kind of stuff.
That's a really good point. I mean,
Yeah.
even today we have to think about, what are we watching? What are we consuming? Who are we surrounding ourselves with?
Right, exactly. So I guess the takeaway here is to guard your influences.
Guard your influences, yeah.
And then letter Nyax, Seneca explores whether a wise person needs friends.
Hmm.
And, while the Stoics believe that a wise person is self-sufficient,
Right.
he argues that they still desire friends.
Yeah, okay.
Because friends give them opportunities to practice virtue. So it's not that they need friends,
Yeah.
but they desire them. And he uses the example of Stilbo, who lost everything, and yet he still declared, I have all my valuables with me. And he was referring to his inner qualities,
Oh.
not his possessions. And this echoes Epicurus's view, that true happiness doesn't depend on external possessions.
Right.
So I guess the core idea here is that inner strength matters most.
Absolutely.
Okay, so letter 8. This one advises us to occasionally practice a simple lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
like plain food, coarse clothing. And the idea is to prepare for adversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also to diminish the fear of poverty. And Epicurus, by the way, had a similar practice.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, if you're used to living a simple life,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be as afraid of losing your possessions.
Right.
So the key insight here is prepare for challenges to build resilience.
Exactly. And then finally in letter XC6, Seneca touches on this idea of rehearsing death
Wow.
to liberate ourselves from the fear of it and the fear of losing life. And Seneca believed that truth is valuable regardless of its source. He even quoted Epicurus. So the takeaway here is that confronting mortality can actually free you.
So basically, all these letters from Seneca offer enduring wisdom
Right.
on a variety of topics, right? Like focus, friendship, authenticity, self-improvement, our environment, inner resilience, preparing for hardship, and even facing our own mortality.
Absolutely. So, out of all this stuff that we've talked about, what resonates the most with you from Seneca's timeless insights? And how might even just one of these ancient principles, subtly reshape your perspective or your daily life? And maybe the deepest exploration starts now as you reflect on these powerful words.
I think that's a great place to end it. Thanks for listening,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye.